My name's Paul, welcome to Paul Perambulates. In this episode I'm in the southwest of England, in Devon on Dartmoor. My start point is the car park at Belstone, postcode EX201RD, grid reference SX62139381. What 3 words? Repeated hilltop spenders. On day 1, I climb up to Cosden Beacon and then visit Little Hound Tor, Kes Tor and my overnight stop Sittaford Tor, seeing lots of history along the way. On day 2, from Sittaford, I go to Quintin's Man, Hanging Stone Hill, then visit Wild, Steeperton, Oak, Higher and Belstone tours and manage to pack in even more history. Total distance 32.8 kilometres. Total height gain 899 metres. Total walking time 9 hours and 59 minutes. This is the Belstone car park, an excellent facility. Quite big, 40 or 50 cars, free, no gates. Very, very useful. No overnight sleeping allowed, which is fair enough, but I know that I can safely leave my car here overnight, empty. Belstone itself, beautiful little village right on the edge of the moor. Great start end point for walking. One of the interpretations of the name was derived from Phoenician traders who worshipped a god called Baal and who used to come here to buy tin. And ton was the word for a settlement, so Baal's ton got corrupted to Belstone. That's the story. Like any self-respecting village in Britain, it has a church and a pub, the Tors, which has some beautifully situated outdoor tables. And this is the view from the seating. Great spot to unwind at the end of your walking day. There's a very scenic ford with some nice rushing water at the bottom of the hill here. But I know there's a footbridge down here, so I'm not going to risk wet feet this early in the walk. And lo and behold, the footbridge is about 30 metres upstream. I'm looking up Cosden Hill, which is a dome-shaped convex hill. You can't see the top of it until you're really close to it. You keep seeing a horizon, you think it's the top, you get to it, it isn't, you see another one, you get to that, you see another one. Scouts used to call it Heartbreak Hill. It's also not very nice underfoot. The best way up it is to contour round the northern end of it, using that path we can see over there, and then there's a path up the eastern side which, okay, is no less steep, but at least it's much easier walking. Here's a common Dartmoor feature which is called a leat, L-E-A-T. It's a human dug channel for moving water around, for drinking water or mining or other purposes. I'm now on that path up the eastern side of Cosden Hill. Still steep, still long, but much easier walking than all the tussocky moorland grass around it. After what seems like an age, finally the top comes into view. Coston Beacon, 550 metres, one of the highest points on Dartmoor. Fabulous views, but very windy. To the west now, we can see some of the highest points of the moor, including High Willhays and Yes Tor. To the north and east, we have a view across Devon that would be even more panoramic if it was a clearer day. I'm on the way down from Cosden to Hound Tor now, onto rough moorland path, but okay to walk and easy enough to follow. Along the way we come to this, Little Hound Tor, little being the operative word. Here, between Little Hound Tor and Hound Tor, is something that's going to be a bit of a theme of this walk. A stone circle. Wikipedia tells me that there are over 70 of these on Dartmoor. Constructed during the late Neolithic or Bronze Ages, not much known about their origins or purpose. This one doesn't even have a name. In the background is the White Moor stone, and that's a different thing, not connected to the stone circle. It's a boundary stone, marking the point at which the boundaries of 3 parishes meet. Coming up onto the top of Hound Tor, we're right out in the wilderness now. Moorland, everywhere you look. Looking back northward to Cosden and then round to the west, Tors galore. Belstone, Higher, Oak, Road Tor, West Mill, Yes Tor, High Willhays, Steeperton. Wild, Hanging Stone Hill, Wattern. Too many to name. I've dropped down into the lee of Hound Tor, and on a windy day like today it makes an amazing difference, so this is my lunch spot. I'm taking great care now to keep to these moorland paths, which are taking me around to the north of 2 areas on my right named Rue Lake Pit and Gallivan Mire. They are every bit as boggy, marshy and nasty as they sound, and they are well worth keeping out of the way of. Here's our second stone circle in between Kennan Hill and Buttern Hill. All these stones, the ones that are left, are laying down. A lot of them have been taken. Got no name again, and it's quite hard to find. I only knew it was here because of the map, and I couldn't actually see it until I got about 20 yards away. Here is, according to Wikipedia, Devon's finest stone circle. Technically it's called Gidley, but it's known to the locals and on the Ordnance Survey map as Scorehill Stone Circle. According to Wikipedia, the pronunciation should be Scorehill, but the locals talk about, for example, Anginstone Hill, so I'm going to stick with Scorehill. There are a lot of old wives' tales associated with this one. Horses, apparently, refuse to pass through it, although I've just seen those sheep go through with no problem at all. The tale of the faithless wives and fickle maidens tells us that ladies who'd gone astray were made to run round Score Hill 3 times, wash themselves in a local pool, and then pray in front of one of the stones for absolution. If they were unsuccessful, the stone would fall on them and crush them. You may notice that a number of these stones are down. It is believed that many stone circles were used as primitive agricultural calendars. Apparently, if you are standing in the centre of the circle, as I am, the sun rises over this, the tallest stone, on Midsummer's Eve, which may lend some weight to that theory. The appeal of Score Hill, though, lies not just in the stone circle itself, but also in the backdrop. Away to the west, it's overlooked by water and wild tors. Looking southwest, we see Fernworthy Forest and Sittaford Tor. To the southeast and much closer, the imposing bulk of Kes Tor. Not far away, at Score Hill Down, another piece of history in granite, albeit considerably more recent, most likely constructed in medieval times to allow the passage of wheeled carts across the stream. It's called a clapper bridge, that word deriving from the Anglo-Saxon cleaca, meaning to pass over stepping stones. Most larger clapper bridges consist of multiple slabs of granite laid across the tops of piles of stones rising from the stream, and we will see an example of that shortly. This stream is narrow enough, however, to only require 1 span. Crossing this one now, we're on our way to a slightly bigger example of a single span bridge. This is the Waller Brook Clapper Bridge. Again, single span, albeit slightly bigger. Crossing this one, we'll head for an even better example. And here's the biggest one in this area. This is the Tiniver Clapper Bridge, complete with decorative ponies just to make it look absolutely idyllic. And this one does support itself in the centre on a pile of stones, and so literally is going across the top of the stepping stones. One of these guys has got a bit curious and come right up close. This place is not actually far off the edge of the moor and is a really beautiful picnic spot, and so these guys are kind of used to being given food by picnickers. They are very, very tame indeed. That said, you shouldn't feed them. Human food can make them very, very poorly, so please don't do that. We've been to Kes Tor before in the series, but what's grabbed me about it this time is, as you come up past it and round the corner, you're treated to these beautiful views behind me. Skirting the northern edge of Fernworthy Forest now, and we have these lovely, wide, easily walkable paths. At the stile on the corner of Fernworthy Forest now, and it's a scene of devastation here, but Fernworthy is a working forest, and every now and again they cut bits of it down. As we come up to our next objective, it's very, very easy to spot. This is our 4th stone circle and the last one for today, the grey weathers. And in fact, we'll see in a minute, it's not just one stone circle, but two. Apparently the centres of these two circles line up exactly north to south, and I've just done a little compass check and that is completely true, they do. Grey Weathers is in the best condition of any of the stone circles we've seen today, and there's a good reason for that. In 1909 there was some restoration work done. Volunteers stood up all the fallen stones. And that's something that's happened only here, not at any of the other sites. There is a truly excellent story about the origin of the name Grey Weathers, which, if it isn't true, deserves to be. Weathers is an Old English word for sheep, and the story goes that a farmer new to the area went to market in Tavistock, and afterwards, in the pub, loudly complained about the quality of the sheep that were for sale. So the locals plied him with a few more ciders and brought him up on the moor to this spot on a very misty day. They pointed at the stones and said, "Look at those beautiful grey sheep, they are for sale, why don't you buy them?" And the farmer, a good few pints in, duly did. He came back the next day to find that they were the stones. Now there are two things that make that story faintly believable. The first is the Dartmoor mist, which really can make stuff look a bit different. But the second is the local cider, which, if you've drank enough pints of it, can make anything look like anything else. I found running water at the expected spot, although only the barest trickle. However, doesn't look too bad. Faintest brown tinge, but no bits in it. Final big slog of the day from my water collection point up to Sittaford Tor, where I'm camping. Got all that water on board now, so a little bit heavier, but not far to go. I'm at Sittaford Tor, and I think I found my camping spot. Got a westerly coming all night, so I'm on the east side, tucked in nicely behind the Tor. Nicely set up in the lee of the Tor. Got a nice handy rock table to work on. All looking good. Great views towards the south from here. On the left, Hameldown Tor, and on the right, Riders Hill with Belstone Tor in the foreground of it. Looking southwest, we can see Beardown Tors, and then zooming out, on the right, TV transmission tower on North Hessery Tor, and on the left, Higher White Tor. In the other direction, to the north, we can see Cosden Hill, which I climbed this morning. I was expecting a westerly tonight, but not this strong, and this is what's pushed me over to the eastern side of the Tor. I normally camp on the west side where the common land is, but if I want my tent to still be with me in the morning, I don't have much of a choice tonight. And with all this cloud being blown over, there's not much of a sunset to write home about. I'm out of my tent in the middle of the night to see what is both a blue moon and a supermoon. The name blue moon is nothing to do with the colour. It's too complicated to explain here, so Google it if you're interested. It happens 7 times in every 19 years, hence the expression. A supermoon occurs when it's at its perigee, the closest point of its orbit to the Earth, at which point it appears at its largest in the sky. The coincidence of a blue moon and a supermoon is therefore extremely rare, and I've been fortunate enough to catch it through the very few gaps in tonight's cloud. Morning. Time to get on the case for day 2. See what it brings. Fortunately, most of the cloud has disappeared overnight, and away to the east, over Fernworthy Forest, we have a sunrise. Our friend the blue moon supermoon remains visible and is now completely unobscured by cloud, providing one of the most interesting dawn skies you could ever wish to see. Coming from the other direction though, from the west, is this narrow band of low cloud creeping across the moor. And that column of cloud is pouring towards the rising sun, playing tricks with the light. Got coffee going now, so whatever happens, I'll be all right. Cheers. The bag's all packed and I'm ready to go. This is where I camped. No trace left. Just come over Sittaford Tor. On my way to Quintin's Man. This is what it looks like from the other side. That's where I'm going. Some of that low cloud is still hanging around over there. Hopefully that will be gone by the time I get there. Nice easy nav over to Quintin's Man, handrailing this wall, and obvious well-worn paths. At Quintin's Man, there's a flagpole, a couple of military huts and a cairn. On top of the cairn, there's a small shelter, and marching off into the distance are the poles that mark the boundary of the military firing range. I'm on my way now from Quintin's Man to Hanging Stone Hill. There is a path, although you'll need to be very careful to make sure you don't lose it and get stuck in the horrible tussocky, boggy ground that surrounds it. The other temptation is to follow the range poles, which, if you're going where I'm going, you don't want to do. I'm standing on a spot height on the map shown as 602 metres, which by my estimation makes it round about the 4th, 5th or 6th highest point on the moor. but you'll never see it in a list of the highest points because it doesn't have a name. Up the way there is Hanging Stone Hill, which is very much officially one of the highest points, and we'll be going there shortly. Just behind me here is something that is very important to my route today. In fact, without it, I wouldn't be able to come this way. It's called a peat pass, and it's a passage where the peat has been dug off the underlying granite in order to make it passable. There are a good number of peat passes around this area of Dartmoor, and they're all the work of one man. Frank Philpotts was a very high-powered lawyer in London until an illness cost him his hearing. He came to practice locally in Dartmoor and developed a love of horse riding on the high moor, particularly in this area. He knew all the parts that were passable because the peat was shallow and the firm granite was underneath, and it frustrated him that there were other bits that weren't passable. So he resolved to link up those pathways by having the peat dug off the granite to make the peat passes, and he employed some guys to come up and do that and put in drainage channels to keep them open. He died over 100 years ago and they're still here, so I think we can say that it worked. At the head of this particular peat pass on White Horse Hill, and marked on the Ordnance Survey map as Memorial Stone, stands this fitting tribute to Frank Philpotts, the man who's made my journey and many others possible. We're in the peat pass now, and we can see it goes quite deep. There's a lot of digging to be done here. There is actually a good reason why this one is clearer than the others and is probably the best example. And that is that in 1963 the army came up here with a bulldozer and cleared it out because they wanted to be able to get trucks from Hanging Stone Hill to Quintin's Man. The top of Hanging Stone Hill is quite nondescript, having the same flagpole, hut and cairn arrangement as Quintin's Man. What is interesting about it though is that standing at 604 metres, it is the joint third highest point on the moor, shorter only than High Willhays and Yes Tor. That height and its location towards the centre of the North Moor gives it an unparalleled 360-degree view, encompassing far too many tors and hills to name. From the slopes of Hanging Stone Hill, we get an excellent side-on view of what is, to me, the most aesthetically pleasing of all the tors, Wattern Tor. Looking ahead, we see my next destination, Wild Tor, and behind it, Cosden Hill, which we climbed yesterday. We can see most of the rest of today's route. Sittaford Tor on the right, behind it, the ridge I'll follow northwards, where I'll visit Oak Tor, Higher Tor and Belstone Tor. I'm at Wild Tor now, a good example of how, in general, the further north on the moor you go, the bigger and rockier the tors are. Wild Tor covers a big area with lots of outcrops, again more typical of the more northerly tors, and we'll see some bigger and rockier ones as we go. It's also clearly home to some extremely tasty grass. Boy, is it windy here! Top of Sittaford Tor, holding me hat on, just. From Sittaford Tor we can see a lot of yesterday's route. Cosden Hill there, Little Hound Tor, Hound Tor, Score Hill Down, Kes Tor and Fernworthy Forest, and then in the foreground Wotton Tor and Wild Tor. Looking westward from Steeperton we can see Roe Tor, West Mill Tor and then the two highest points of the moor, Yes Tor and High Willhays. This is what the top of Steeperton itself looks like. I'm now coming up to the first of the tors on the ridge going northwards, Oak Tor. I seem to be attracting only minimal interest from the local residents. Oak Tor is quite big, but they will get bigger as we go. The navigation is easy here, straight along the top of the ridge, as is the walking. Nice wide paths with short grass and inlaid stones. Looking at the big climb ahead, I think we can see how Higher Tor got its name, although it's not as high as the one behind it. This is a very useful navigation aid. It's called Irishman's Wall and it's shown on the Ordnance Survey map. It's the dividing line between the outcrops of Higher Tor and those of Belstone Tor and tells us exactly where we are along the ridge. The final, biggest and most impressive tor along the ridge, Belstone Tor, consisting of rocks the size of garden sheds, hundreds of which have eroded away over thousands of years and cascaded down the hillside. I'm standing on the top of Belstone Tor now, and being at the northern end of the moor, we now have great views over North Devon. Round to the west, we can still see Yes Tor, High Willhays. To the east, a side-on view of yesterday morning's route, Coston Hill, Little Hound Tor, Hound Tor. Just like Higher Tor, there is a lot of Belstone Tor. Stretches a long way along the ridge. And then there's a whole other outcrop down there, which is not named separately on the map and therefore must be another part of Belstone Tor. If you thought there wouldn't be any more stone circles on day 2 of this walk, you're wrong. I've saved one for the very last thing. This is the Nine Maidens stone circle on Belstone Common, and the story about it is that the maidens were caught dancing on the Sabbath and were therefore turned to stone. And the story goes on to say that they can be seen dancing if you hear at noon on any day. I haven't made it by noon, so unfortunately I've missed that. The alternative name for it is the 17 Brothers, and the inconsistency in the numbering is explained by the fact that it's hard to count things that are dancing. If you actually count the stones, both those numbers are wrong. There are about 21. The spirituality doesn't stop there though. It's situated on the ley line that runs from Land's End up through Norfolk, known as the St Michael ley line, and that also goes through the St Michael Tower on Glastonbury Tor and various other spiritual sites, if you believe in that kind of thing. Well, that's me all stone circled out, so I'll leave it here for now. Dartmoor is very well known to me through my work with 10 tours. For this episode, I thought I'd go and visit all my favourite tours that I hadn't been to previously in the series. The stone circles idea only really came about when I looked around the route and saw how many there were. I mentioned earlier that there are over 70 stone circles on Dartmoor. So does that mean that it is a place of particular spiritual significance? I don't think so. I think that can be explained purely by the availability of building materials. Let me explain. Tours are created through a process called periglaciation. Too complicated to go into here, Google it. If you look at any tour, the cracks and fissures in it are very regular, almost rectangular. And over time, blocks break away and tumble down the hills. There's a local name for that, it's called clitter. And you can see some up on the hill there behind me. Those blocks are very regular in shape and size. So what that means is that Dartmoor is basically a giant Lego set for stone circle builders. And I think the answer is no more complicated than that. As regards to the route, I would give that a difficulty of 7, perhaps only because it's so long and you can easily break it down. Navigation is easy to me, but then I know the area. But why not come and look at the stone circles and look up the information about them on Wikipedia, because it is a very fascinating subject. And if you decide to do it, I hope you have a great time. All maps and 3D fly-throughs provided by kind permission of Ordnance Survey through their excellent OS Online application. Big thanks also for all music used in this video to mixkit.co, tunetank.com and upbeat.io. Specific song and artist credits can be found in the comments. These videos are designed to show you around the routes I walk in case you're considering doing them yourself. They are not designed to be any kind of hill walking training or guidance. If you need hill walking skills, obtain them in person from a reputable, qualified provider. Please don't attempt these walks without appropriate levels of fitness and equipment. If you don't have the required levels of knowledge and experience, only undertake them accompanied by somebody who does. You can find out more about me and my background and experience at my website, paulperambulates.co.uk. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Paul Perambulates. If you did, please subscribe and share.